Hello, my friends. Today I want to tell you a story. My story. It is a story of adventure, survival, and discovery. But before all the challenges, before the mystery, before the lonely nights under the stars, there was a dream of the open sea. I lived a simple, peaceful life in a small coastal town. Every morning I would wake up to the sound of waves crashing against the shore. The salty breeze would fill the air, and seagulls would fly over the fishing boats, calling out to one another. The town was quiet, calm, and safe. Some might say it was perfect, but deep inside me I wanted more. I wanted adventure. Since I was a child, I loved reading books about great explorers, men who traveled to unknown lands, who sailed across vast oceans, who discovered new worlds. I imagined myself as one of them, standing on the deck of a ship, looking out at the endless blue horizon. The thought of sailing into the unknown filled me with excitement. One day, I made a decision. I would not just dream of adventure, I would live it. I began preparing for my journey. I saved money, studied maps, and learned about the ocean. I talked to old sailors, listening to their stories and their advice. The sea is beautiful, one of them told me, but it is also dangerous. Respect it, and it will respect you. I nodded, taking his words to heart. Finally, the day arrived. The sky was clear and the sun shone brightly. A gentle wind blew from the west, perfect for sailing. My boat was small but strong, built to survive long journeys. I packed food, water, clothes, and some books to read during my trip. As I stood on the dock, looking at the endless sea, I felt a mix of emotions: excitement, nervousness, curiosity. With one deep breath, I stepped onto my boat. I untied the ropes, raised the sail, and pushed away from the shore. The boat moved forward, cutting through the water smoothly. As I left the town behind, I waved goodbye. The people on the shore became smaller and smaller until they disappeared completely. Now, it was just me and the sea. The waves rocked the boat gently as the wind filled my sails. I looked ahead. There was no land in sight, only water stretching as far as I could see. The sky was blue, the sun was warm, and the air smelled fresh and clean. This was freedom. For hours, I sailed peacefully. The sea whispered its endless song, and I listened, feeling a deep connection to the world around me. I watched dolphins jump in and out of the water, their bodies shining in the sunlight. Birds flew overhead, gliding effortlessly with the wind. Everything felt perfect. As the day turned to evening, the sky changed colors: orange, pink, and deep purple. The sun slowly sank into the ocean, and stars began to appear one by one. I lay on the deck, looking up at the sky. Millions of tiny lights twinkled above me. I had never felt so small and yet so alive. I closed my eyes and smiled. This was just the beginning. My adventure had begun. The sea, like life, is full of surprises. One moment, it is calm and gentle, whispering soft songs of peace. The next, it becomes wild and unforgiving, testing the courage of anyone who dares to challenge its power. I learned this lesson on the third day of my journey, a day I will never forget. The morning began like any other. The sky was clear, the sun warm, and the wind steady. My boat glided across the water with ease, and I felt confident, even proud. The ocean, it seemed, was my friend. As I stood at the helm, steering the boat toward the horizon, I whistled a tune and imagined the adventures ahead. Maybe I would find a new island, a hidden paradise untouched by time. Or perhaps I would meet sailors from distant lands and hear stories of their travels. The possibilities felt endless. But by the afternoon, the sea changed. It started with a strange stillness. The wind, which had been so steady, suddenly stopped. The sail hung loose, and the boat drifted without direction. I looked around. The air grew heavy, and the sky lost its bright blue color. A thin layer of gray spread across the horizon like a warning. The sea, once full of playful waves, became smooth and dark. It was as if the ocean was holding its breath. I tightened my grip on the helm. My heart beat faster. Something was coming. A low rumble echoed from the distance. Thunder. I turned my eyes toward the west and saw it. A massive wall of dark clouds stretching across the sky. The clouds were thick and heavy, moving toward me with alarming speed. The wind returned, but it was no longer friendly. It came in sharp, sudden gusts, pushing against the boat. The sails snapped and shook. I rushed to secure the ropes, tying them tighter, trying to prepare the boat for what was coming. The air turned cold, and the first drops of rain hit my face. I looked up. The sky was no longer gray, it was black. Flashes of lightning split the darkness, followed by deep, growling thunder. The peaceful ocean I had known was gone. The storm had arrived. The wind roared like a wild beast, howling through the sails. The waves rose higher and higher, no longer gentle or playful. They crashed against the boat with incredible force. Water sprayed into the air, soaking me from head to toe. The boat rocked violently from side to side. I held onto the helm, my knuckles white with tension. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself. "Just stay calm." But the storm did not listen to my fear. The wind grew stronger, screaming like 1,000 angry voices. The waves became mountains of water, each one taller than the last. The boat climbed up one wave, then crashed down the other side with a jarring thud. My legs shook as I struggled to stay on my feet. Lightning lit up the sky, revealing the chaos around me. The sea was no longer a sea, it was a battlefield. Waves attacked from every direction. Rain poured down like a waterfall. The wind tore at the sails, bending the mast with frightening strength. Suddenly, I heard a sharp crack. I turned my head and saw the sail ripping apart. The mast groaned, bending more and more until, snap, it broke in two. The upper half crashed into the deck, missing me by inches. The boat tilted dangerously to one side. Water poured in over the edge. My heart raced. "Mayday! Mayday!" I shouted, even though I knew no one could hear me. I grabbed a bucket and tried to throw water out of the boat, but it was useless. For every bucket I emptied, the ocean sent 10 more waves crashing over the side. In the flashes of lightning, I saw something ahead. Jagged rocks rising from the water. The current was pulling me toward them. I turned the helm, trying to steer away, but the boat no longer obeyed. The waves had taken control. The rocks came closer, closer. The boat smashed against the rocks with a deafening crash. Wood splintered and cracked. I was thrown into the air, landing hard on the wet deck. Pain shot through my side. Another wave lifted the boat and slammed it again. The sound of breaking wood filled the air. I knew the boat was finished. I scrambled to the edge of the deck and looked around. The rocks were sharp and deadly, but beyond them, I saw something else, a shadow in the darkness. Land, an island. It was not far, but between me and the shore, the waves raged like hungry monsters. I had no choice. Taking a deep breath, I jumped into the water. The cold hit me like ice. The waves tossed me like a toy, pulling me underwater, then throwing me back up. I kicked my legs and moved my arms as hard as I could. The salt water burned my eyes and filled my mouth. I coughed and gasped for air. The shore seemed so far away. Every muscle in my body screamed with pain. The waves tried to drag me back toward the rocks, but I fought against them. I thought of the sailors I had admired as a child, of their courage in the face of danger. I could not give up. I swam, and swam, and swam. Finally, my feet touched sand. I pushed forward, crawling out of the water like a wounded animal. I collapsed on the beach, my chest heaving, my limbs heavy. The rain still poured and the wind still howled, but I didn't care. I was alive. I closed my eyes, the sound of the waves fading into the distance. Exhaustion pulled me into darkness. The storm had tried to defeat me, but I had survived. What I didn't know was that the real adventure was just beginning. The first thing I felt was pain, a dull, heavy ache in my arms and legs, a sharp sting on my side, and the rough texture of wet sand beneath me. My eyes opened slowly, sticky with salt. The world around me was a blur of gray sky and swaying trees. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then it hit me, the storm, the shipwreck, the endless fight against the waves. I had survived. But where was I? I pushed myself up with trembling arms and sat on the beach, gasping as my muscles protested. The sky above was still cloudy, but the storm had passed. The sea, now calm, stretched to the horizon, its surface smooth and innocent, as if it had forgotten the violence of the night before. Pieces of my broken boat floated near the shore, shattered wood, ropes, and torn sails. The boat was gone, and with it, my connection to the world I knew. I turned and looked inland. The beach was wide and covered in pale, wet sand. Beyond the sand, a thick forest of green trees stood tall and mysterious. The trees were unfamiliar. Some had long, slender leaves. Others had thick, twisting trunks. Vines hung like ropes, and colorful birds called to each other from the branches. The island was wild, untamed. I took a deep breath and stood up. My legs shook under my weight, and my clothes were torn and soaked. My body was sore, but I was alive. And if I wanted to stay alive, I needed a plan. I walked toward the edge of the forest. The ground changed from soft sand to firm, damp soil. The air smelled of wet earth and leaves. I searched for materials to build a shelter, something to protect me from rain, sun, and whatever creatures might live here. I found a group of palm trees standing in a half circle. Their trunks were strong, and their broad leaves hung down like umbrellas. I chose this spot. It was close to the beach, but partly hidden by trees. Using broken pieces of wood from the wreckage, I built a simple frame. I leaned large branches together, creating a triangular shape like a tent. For the roof, I used palm leaves, layering them thickly to block the rain. It wasn't perfect, but it was a shelter. I crawled inside and sat down. The space was small, just enough for me to lie down. The ground was still hard, but for now, it was home. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling safer with something solid around me. My throat was dry and my lips were cracked from the salt water. I needed fresh water. Quickly, I walked deeper into the forest, listening carefully. I remembered what the old sailors had told me. Water often sings before you see it. I stopped and listened. There it was, a faint, rhythmic sound, like soft clapping. I followed the sound, stepping over roots and ducking under low branches. The noise grew louder, clearer. Finally, I found it, a narrow stream flowing over smooth rocks. The water was clear, cold, and inviting. I knelt beside it, cupped my hands, and drank deeply. The water tasted fresh and sweet, washing away the dryness in my mouth. I splashed water on my face and felt a bit stronger. I decided to follow the stream for a while. It might lead me to more resources, food, perhaps. As I walked along the stream, I noticed fruit hanging from a tree, green, round, and familiar. Coconuts. The only problem? They were high up. I searched the ground and found one that had already fallen. I picked it up, shaking it near my ear. I heard the liquid inside. Good. Breaking the coconut open wasn't easy. I smashed it against a sharp rock until it cracked. The thick shell split, revealing white flesh and clear, cool water. I drank the coconut water first, savoring its sweetness. Then I scraped out the meat with my fingers. It was chewy and rich, my first meal on the island. As I continued exploring, I found bushes with small, dark berries. I picked a few, inspecting them closely. They looked similar to berries I had seen before, but I wasn't sure if they were safe. I remembered a rule from a survival book. If you're unsure, don't eat it. So, I left the berries untouched. Near the stream, I saw something else. Fish. Small, silver fish swam against the current. I didn't have a fishing net or hook, but I had patience. I found a long, thin branch and sharpened one end with a sharp rock, creating a makeshift spear. I stood still in the shallow water, watching the fish move. When one swam close, I thrust the spear down. I missed. I tried again and again. On the 7th attempt, I felt resistance. I lifted the spear. A small fish wriggled on the end. I carried the fish back to my shelter. But now I had a new problem. Without fire, I couldn't cook the fish, stay warm at night, or keep animals away. I sat by my shelter, thinking. I remembered stories of people using friction to start a fire. I found a dry, flat piece of wood and carved a small hole in it. Then I took a straight stick and rubbed it between my palms, pressing it into the hole. I spun the stick faster and faster. My hands burned, my arms ached, but I didn't stop. Smoke appeared, then a tiny glowing ember. Carefully, I placed dry grass on the ember and blew gently. The grass glowed, then caught fire. Orange flames danced in the dim light. I had made fire. I cooked the fish over the flames, turning it carefully. When it was done, I ate it slowly, savoring each bite. It wasn't much, but it was warm and satisfying. Night fell. The forest came alive with strange sounds, chirps, hoots, and rustling in the undergrowth. The fire crackled, its glow comforting. I sat beside it, staring into the flames. I thought of home, of the familiar sounds of the harbor, and the laughter of friends. I missed those things. But here, on this unknown island, I had survived the first day. The morning sun broke through the leaves, painting the forest floor with golden patterns. The air was fresh and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and salt water. I stretched my sore muscles, feeling every ache from the previous day's survival efforts. My shelter stood firm, the fire had kept me warm through the night, and my belly, though not full, no longer ached with hunger. I had survived the storm. I had found food, water, and shelter. But now, curiosity stirred within me. What was this island? Was it empty, or had others been here before me? My instinct as an explorer woke up. I needed to learn more about the place that might become my home for a long time. After drinking from the stream and eating some leftover coconut, I picked up my sharpened spear and walked along the beach. The sand was soft beneath my feet, still cool from the night. I scanned the shoreline, looking for useful materials washed ashore. Pieces of my broken boat still floated in the shallows, bits of wood, rope, and a torn piece of canvas. I collected the canvas. It might be useful later. Then I saw something unusual. There in the sand, just beyond the reach of the waves, was a footprint. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I bent down, staring at the shape pressed into the sand. It was not my footprint. The size was different, narrower, longer. I looked around. There was another print and another. A trail of footprints stretched along the beach, leading toward the dense jungle. My heart raced. I was not alone. Was it a friend or a danger? A castaway like me or something more threatening? Questions swirled in my mind. I tightened my grip on the spear and followed the footprints. The trail led me off the beach and into the forest. The footprints were clear at first, but became harder to follow as the ground turned to thick roots and dry leaves. I moved carefully, trying not to make noise. Every rustle of leaves sounded louder than usual. As I walked, the forest grew denser. Vines hung like ropes, and strange flowers bloomed in vivid colors, reds, yellows, and deep purples. The air became warmer, heavier with the scent of damp plants. Birds chirped from high above, their calls sharp and rhythmic. The footprints continued. Whoever made them knew the land well. They avoided muddy spots and moved around thick tree roots with ease. I followed, curiosity pushing me forward. After nearly an hour, the tracks led me to a clearing. I stepped out from the shadows and stopped in surprise. There, in the middle of the clearing, stood a cabin. The structure was old and weathered, made from thick wooden logs. Moss and vines covered the walls, and the roof was patched with dried palm leaves. The door hung slightly open, creaking gently in the breeze. A wooden chair sat on the small porch, tilted to one side. I gripped my spear tightly. Who built this cabin? Was someone still living here? I listened carefully. The forest around me whispered with the sounds of birds and insects, but there were no human voices, no footsteps. Slowly, cautiously, I approached the cabin. The steps creaked beneath my weight. I pushed the door open with the end of my spear. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and thyme. Sunlight filtered through cracks in the walls, creating thin beams of light that danced with dust particles. The room was simple: one wooden bed, a small table, and a shelf lined with objects: seashells, a rusty knife, and a few clay pots. In the corner, an old fishing net hung on the wall, torn and discolored. On the table, something caught my eye, a leather-bound book, a diary. I reached for it, my fingers brushing the cracked leather cover. The edges were worn, the pages yellowed. Carefully, I opened the book. The handwriting was uneven but legible. The first page read, "Diary of Captain Elias Grayson, shipwrecked, year 1823. My pulse quickened. Another castaway had been here. I turned the page and began to read. June 5th, 1823. The sea, my old companion, betrayed me at last. A storm, wild and merciless, shattered my ship against the rocks. I swam to this island, exhausted but breathing, alone. The island is vast, with thick forests and strange noises in the night. I fear I am not the first to walk these sands. I glanced around the cabin. My heart pounded louder with each word. Captain Grayson had been here, like me, thrown onto this island by the sea. But what did he mean by, "I fear I am not the first"? I turned the page. June 12th, 1823. Water is plentiful here, thanks to the streams. Food, too. Coconuts, berries, and fish. I built this shelter with wood from my wreck. The nights are cold, and the sounds from the jungle grow stranger each evening. I found footprints near the beach. Human footprints. I am not alone. I stood up, the diary still in my hands, and looked toward the door. Footprints. Just like the ones I had followed. Captain Grayson had been here over 100 years ago, and he had seen them too. Someone else lived, or had lived, on this island. I turned another page. June 20th, 1823. I followed the tracks today. They led me deep into the jungle, to the base of the eastern cliffs. I found carvings in the stone, symbols, faces, eyes watching me from the rock. The people of this island are clever. They know I am here. I sense it. I swallowed hard. I had thought this island was empty, but maybe it wasn't. I closed the diary and set it back on the table. My mind raced. Should I leave the cabin? Should I go back to the beach and build a raft? Or should I find these people and learn who they were? I walked outside and looked toward the forest. The footprints were gone, lost in the shadows. But now I knew. Someone was watching. The discovery of the old cabin and Captain Grayson's diary haunted my thoughts. The footprints, the mysterious carvings he mentioned, the sense that I was being watched, all of it swirled in my mind like the ocean's endless currents. But the diary also gave me hope. Captain Grayson had survived here for some time. If he could, then so could I. I decided to return to the cabin the next morning. I packed a small bundle of food, some coconut meat, and a few fish I had dried near my fire. My spear remained in my hand, my only weapon and source of comfort. The journey back to the clearing was quicker this time, my steps more confident. When I reached the cabin, everything looked the same. The door hung slightly open, the chair on the porch still tilted. I pushed the door wider and stepped inside. The diary was still on the table. I picked it up and turned to the last written page. July 2nd, 1823. The footprints returned today, closer to the cabin. I stayed inside, watching through the cracks. They never approached, but I could feel their presence. I fear they are testing me, learning about me. Tomorrow, I will go to the cliffs and try to communicate. If I do not return, let it be known that I tried to make peace." I ran my fingers over the words. Captain Grayson had gone to the cliffs. But what cliffs? I needed more information. I flipped through the remaining pages. The last few were empty, except for a single faint sentence scrawled in the margin. "The eastern cliffs, beyond the river. The eastern cliffs." I stood and stepped back outside. The sun was high overhead. I remembered the stream where I found water. It flowed east. I decided to follow it. I walked for hours, tracing the stream as it twisted through the forest. The sounds of the jungle grew louder: birds, insects, and the occasional distant crack of branches. My senses remained sharp. Each new sound made me pause and scan the trees. The footprints I had seen were proof I was not alone. Finally, I heard a new sound: the crash of waves. I pushed through the last line of trees and emerged onto a wide plateau. Before me, the ground dropped off into a towering cliff. The ocean stretched endlessly beyond. The water was deep blue, speckled with white foam as waves slammed into the rocks below. I stepped closer to the edge. The cliff face was smooth, but then I saw them, carvings etched into the stone, spirals, eyes, and strange symbols. Someone had been here long before me. Suddenly, a noise behind me, a footstep. I spun around, raising my spear. A figure stood at the tree line, half hidden in the shadows. My heart raced. The person stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "Wait!" the voice called. "Don't hurt me!" It was a boy, maybe 16 or 17 years old. His hair was sun-bleached and messy, his clothes torn and patched. His face was thin, but his eyes were sharp. He looked as surprised as I felt. "Who are you?" I demanded, my spear still raised. "My name is Leo," he said. I'm like you, shipwrecked." I hesitated. "How long?" Leo lowered his hands. "Over a year. My ship sank during a storm. I woke up on the beach, just like you, I guess." I studied his face. He looked scared but sincere. Slowly, I lowered my spear. "How did you find me?" I asked. "I saw your footprints by the beach yesterday," Leo said. "I've been following you since. I wasn't sure if you were dangerous." "And what about these carvings?" I gestured toward the stone wall. Leo's eyes darkened. "The islanders made them. The people who lived here long ago. They don't come here anymore. The cliffs are sacred to them." "Islanders?" I repeated, my pulse quickening. Leo nodded. "They live deep in the jungle. I've seen them a few times, from a distance. They avoid the cliffs now." I had so many questions, but one thing was clear: I was no longer alone. There was someone else, someone like me, trying to survive here. "Come on," I said. "Let's go back to my shelter." The walk back was strange but comforting. Leo was cautious and alert, always glancing around, but he seemed relieved to talk to someone after so long alone. When we reached my shelter, Leo smiled. "Not bad," he said, examining the palm leaf roof. "But we can do better." He taught me how to build stronger walls by weaving branches together. We reinforced the roof with thicker leaves and built a raised sleeping platform to stay dry when it rained. Leo showed me how to use vines to tie structures together more tightly. "Where did you learn all this?" I asked as we worked. "My father was a fisherman," Leo said. "He taught me how to build huts on the coast when we camped. It was just a fun adventure back then. His voice grew quiet. Now it's survival. We spent the next few days improving the camp. We built a larger fire pit with stones around it to contain the flames. Leo taught me how to make fishing traps from bamboo and vines. Soon we had a steady supply of fish without needing to stand in the stream with spears. Leo also showed me plants to avoid, bright berries that were poisonous, and certain mushrooms that made him sick when he first arrived. Together, survival became easier. We worked as a team, sharing stories at night by the fire. Leo told me about his hometown, a small fishing village, and I told him about my dream of adventure. We laughed sometimes, even though we were stranded in an unknown world. One evening, Leo stared at the horizon where the sky met the sea. "We should make a signal," he said, "in case a ship passes by." The next morning, we climbed a small hill near the beach. Using driftwood, we built a large pile of dry branches and leaves. Then, we found a piece of Captain Grayson's old canvas sail. We painted a large SOS on it with charcoal from the fire and laid it across the rocks. "If we see a ship," Leo said, "we'll light the fire and wave the canvas." Days passed. We fell into a routine, fishing, gathering coconuts, checking the stream, maintaining the shelter. The sense of fear faded slightly now that we had each other. But the mystery of the islanders remained. Who were they? Why did they carve symbols into the cliffs? And more importantly, were they still watching us?